Some of them just have the mother and child. Some of the pictures that I wanted to bring you, but unfortunately my photograph didn't come out too well. There's what probably were some companion pieces, but they're now in different museums. But the Cincinnati Museum of Art has a, I'm trying to remember which one's where. I think there's one of them which is the mother is playing with the baby's toes, and it's this little piggy, and the other one where they're playing patty cake. And one is in New Britain in Connecticut, Museum of American Art. And once again, they're beautifully painted. The details of the fabric and the still life and all of those are, they really are. But the subjects are subjects that we have come to think of as, if you were showing suffering and pain, probably today critics might like them better. But here we see the mother just embracing her child with the fireplace. The pictures I was talking about, they also have the fireplace. They are that mother, and the Cincinnati picture is dressed with more upscale garments. So she does show just the love of mother and child. Some of her pictures have a patriotic theme, which once again would be very, very popular. This is the time of the Civil War. And of course, they are definitely on the Union side. In this picture, it's even got a colon, double name, War Spirit at Home, Celebrating Victory at Vicksburg. Now, basically what you're seeing here is mother's got the newspaper, and they have received word of the victory for the Union forces at Vicksburg. And so the children are, very happy because, their side won. And so they're parading around. Little boy has a little, looks like a little folded paper hat. They're taking pots and pans and banging on them like drums. So the idea is, that you're supposed to keep up your spirits and be patriotic. And it's interesting, too, because it's not showing the battlefield. It's showing the reaction of people at home. And like all of these pictures that she does, they're very optimistic. You can see why something like this would be very, very popular. Now, the painting is painted after the end of the Civil War. She's painting it later, not the moment it happened. And it's not really autobiographical because I don't think her husband went to war. I think he was probably older at the time and had a lot of, you couldn't just go off and leave the family. But in this picture, you'll see there's no men. That the husband is away at war. He may have even been in that battle. And one of the things I suppose she could be reading too is the casualty list and seeing that his name is not on it. There's a narrative to it that we can make up stories about these people. Another patriotic theme, and that's particularly in the title, is the home of the red, white, and blue. And you can see the American flag out here and people having fun outside in nature. You've got a little hurdy-gurdy man, it looks like, with a little monkey there. Looks like a little girl, maybe a little afraid of the monkey. But it's all sort of happy and pleasant, and we're having fun. And we're Americans. You see the different generations there. This picture is a very large picture. And it's a really interesting picture. I think that she probably had a lot of ambition for it. Unfortunately, it's hard to get a good reproduction. The reproduction on the National Museum of Women in the Arts website is this tiny little thumbnail. They don't, I guess, want you reproducing it. I took lots and lots of pictures of this in the museum, but they came out very yellow, so we have tried to adjust them. And then I went back with a digital camera and took more pictures, in which the color came out beautifully, but there's glass on the picture. And as you can see on the picture on the right, there's some interesting places where the spotlights that are on the paintings have reflected, and even the exit signs. So I was conflicted. You know, do I put my picture in that's too dark and too yellow, or do I show you the things with the correct color, but that have these strange additions, like exit signs being reflected in the picture? So I put both of them up, but I'll ask you to kind of think away the flaws of the photograph, if you will. Sorry about that. This is the artist family at the 4th of July picnic. I just call it 4th of July picnic. But it's their whole family, and probably extended family and friends and servants, and all sorts of things are going on. I think this is a very ambitious painting because it has humor, it has still life, it has sort of all sorts of relationships between different people, and it has this almost Rococo landscape. So she's, you know, really is showing her skill. But once again, it would appeal to someone because of the Americana humor and the patriotism, the idea of it being a 4th of July picnic. This one is still painted during the war. Down in the bottom, with this, you know, we be sure of the title because it's kind of written out. You have the fireworks. And a piece of paper that says the 4th of July and the date. We also have, now Lilly isn't in this detail, but we do see Lilly, her family, her friends, in this very spacious landscape. So here's this landscape, which is just a rather, you know, exquisitely, like I say, very softly painted, light reflections, just light coming through the whole landscape. Some things that I wished I could pick up with my camera but didn't is you actually can see some of the underdrawings with some of these figures. The young lady in the gold dress where she's seated down and leaning back and smiling. You know, she's you can see the underdrawings through that. So it's kind of interesting. People are having a good time. You can see that there is a soldier who's back from the front, and his sister or girlfriend or whoever, the young lady standing next to him with her hands on her hips, is wearing his hat. And then you see a group down in the corner, evidently a courting couple or something, gone off by themselves. Right in the middle of it is this, once again, humorous bit in which we see both portraits of the family members, and the dramatic center is something that is I guess you would say every day. There is Ben. He's put on some weight. He's getting a little older now. And he's evidently been trying to swing on one of the children's swing, but the rope broke. And down he goes. And as you can see, some of the people are laughing at him. His child is very worried and trying to help him up. He's not really hurt. The woman over here in the detail, we can see right over on the left with her arms outstretched, that's Lily Martin Spencer. She's very worried about her husband. She's reaching out to him. So that's all very interesting. Now, one of the things that the museum website pointed out was that the pose is actually a classical reference. I mean, who would think? But a very famous Roman statue, the Dying Gaul. It's almost a kind of reversal of that pose. So, as I said, there's some ambitions for this painting, and it is quite wonderfully painted. Unfortunately, when I get to the details, they're not beautifully photographed, but just trying to get you a little bit of the idea. Here we have, of course, the Lily Martin Spencer and her friends. And that landscape is really interesting. The trees, can you see this? How the trees are very sort of feathery. And you know, it reminds you really almost of an 18th century Rococo landscape, which is a very sophisticated concept, to be perfectly frank. I'm showing you probably one of the most famous 18th century paintings of all, Watteau's Embarkation for Cythera. But you can see that and the detail I have of the Lily Martin Spencer tree above curves in exactly the same way. I don't know that she would ever have seen that painting, however. How could she? I guess it's in the Louvre. I don't think she ever went to France. Another suggestion is that this is more than just a genre painting and people having fun on the 4th of July. It has been interpreted, and of course we're not sure whether Lily Martin Spencer intended this, or maybe it is just a little subtle comment. And it's been suggested that some of the things that are going on refer to the fact that there's social change going on. Ben falls, and the traditional idea was the father should not be laughed at, and he wouldn't be riding on a spring. He wouldn't be swinging on a swing anyway, because that would be lack of dignity. So, is this showing that they no longer respect the traditional values, or that the traditional values are changing and that things are becoming a little more informal? Now, I want to spend some time looking at how the black servants are portrayed. I admit, I'm confused by this. One of the little humorous bits is the black servant is spilling wine or some kind of liquid on this sort of crotchety, middle-aged white woman's dress, and she doesn't look very happy about it. So, you know, is this, hey, I can do this. Now remember, this is in, they lived in New York and they lived in Ohio. So these would be servants, presumably, not slaves. We'll talk about that in a moment. You know, is he deliberately spilling the wine to get back at her because she was nasty? Or, you know, does this show that he has the upper hand? I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things going around here. And I think that we definitely are going to look at it differently than a 19th century audience. The little black girl is supposed to be watching the baby. She's not really watching the baby. The baby doesn't seem to be fine. She's sitting next to it, but she's looking over and laughing at this little episode that's going on, where the, as I said, call her the crotchety old lady, is getting wine spilled on her. And as I say, I want to talk about those figures later. I want to essentially open it up for a debate between the students. Another things that they say, well, these are things that are different. We have a little boy shooting the pistol. Well, actually, think about it. This is during the Civil War. I'm sure that kids had play guns. And idea of social change, the women's role may be changing, where the young lady has appropriated her friend's, as I said, brother, who knows, but her companion's hat. And she's wearing the little hat, Union soldier's hat. I used to have a reproduction of one of those when I was a kid myself. The thing that I wanted to do, well, let me just tell you about this. When I went to the Hunter Museum of American Art in Chattanooga, and I took pictures of Lily Martin Spencer's young husband first marketing, and I'm looking at all the works of art. I spot a picture which really isn't terribly wonderful quality of painting, but the subject matter was kind of fascinating. It was by a local mid-19th century Tennessee artist whose name was James Cameron. And the title that they gave was Colonel and Mrs. James A. Whiteside, Son James and Servants, and then the date of 1858 to 59. It was very much centered in its locale. They said they moved Lookout Mountain, so you could see Lookout Mountain in the background. And that Cameron had moved from Scotland to the U.S., and he lived in Nashville, and he lived in Chattanooga in the 1850s and early 1860s. So these servants, which they so euphemistically name as servants, would be slaves. You know, we're on the other side of the Mason-Dixon line here, before the Civil War. And I thought it was interesting, the thing that struck me was the similarities in the the black people in the pictures. In both cases, you have a family meal with a landscape. One's on their terrace, because they're wealthy landowners, and the others have gone out for a picnic in a beautiful landscape. But it was interesting that the male and female slaves were doing very much the same kind of activities in both pictures. A slave in the one and servant in the other. So we see the picture here. And I'm taking these details so they're not as sharp perhaps as they could be. But you see the beautiful young adult black woman who's holding the white baby. She's the nursemaid, evidently. And I found this on the web, and also a black and white reproduction of it in the Lilly Martin Spencer catalog. It's a detail, it's a picture, independent picture of a black young lady and a smiling little white girl, little baby, and a nice big fluffy dog in a little landscape. And it's called Dixieland. And it has, it's exactly the same detail that we see used in the 4th of July picnic. My guess would have been that they would have, that what she would have done was excerpted that, taken that detail and made it into an independent picture. On the other hand, the date that was given was a few years before the 4th of July picnic. So maybe it was the other way around. Maybe she painted this for some kind of market for somebody, and then used the pose again in her larger picture. Now, this was one of the things that I was curious about. They're doing the same activities. Presumably, the person in the Cameron picture is actually a slave, because it's the 1850s in North Carolina and Tennessee. And the young lady who is more like a adolescent or teenage girl, the babysitter, but having adult responsibilities, this is a servant, because there is not slavery where Spencer lives. Now, one of the odd things to me was that her parents, remember, they were abolitionists. Wouldn't you think that might find their way into the pictures? And yet, also you have the young slave boy just coming in, profile from the side, bearing glasses, presumably glasses of wine, glasses of some kind of beverage. And then we have the adult black servant who's pouring the wine or pouring the drink. And as we said, I know you can't really see it in the detail, but he's splattering some of the drink on the woman, and she doesn't look very happy about it at all. She looks kind of crotchety anyway, which might be the joke. Now, Lilly Martin Spencer, in a sense, does have caricatures of all the figures. It's broad humor, Ben falling down, this kind of thing. But particularly to our 20th century, or I guess we're now 21st century, eyes, the black figures seem particularly caricatures. The smiling servant. Oh, yeah. Although he is doing something that I don't think you would see a slave doing in a picture. It might be worth him being beaten or even killed to make that kind of mistake. So he's kind of laughing at the white woman. So there is something here. He's got a little bit more freedom, but the characterization of the smiling servant black man grates a bit to our modern sensibilities. So, I'm thinking, how are we supposed to interpret this? Are these pictures intended to be derogatory? And I have a hard time with that, knowing what I know about Lilly Martin Spencer's family. Is it just that even people who were of abolitionist background, who said that black people should not be slaves, still believe some of the caricatures of blacks? Or does she put this in because she's aiming for she's not preaching to you, she's aiming for a mass audience? Or, I mean, I can think of also the ors. I don't know. I don't know what she's thinking. Or is the idea that, you know, he does have this freedom. And are we supposed to laugh at the white woman who looks a bit crotchety? Is the joke on her? It's some kind of rough humor. It's Americana humor from the 19th century. I'm wondering if you would like me to put up just a discussion where you could feel free to make comments about this. And maybe what I should also do is put up some pictures. I don't have colored images, but I've found some black and white images of some other black figures that she did. And they are caricatures by our standards. They are really cute children. One of them is a little black girl who's all dressed up in dress-up clothes. And it's supposed to be something like the height of fashion. And the other one is a little boy, and he's got a cigar or a cigarette or something. And it's like, you know, this is what fashion does? I forget the exact title. I'll tell you later. But they're really supposed to be cute. I mean, I can see that. They're supposed to be cute. But like I say, they look like caricatures. When I was in Cincinnati, I saw another picture of a black figure, which was painted some 30 years after this by another artist. And it was just a perfectly beautiful portrait. You know, realistic, not caricature. But her white people are kind of caricatures too. So I'm very confused about how we should look at this. And how did Lilly Martin Spencer intend it to be seen? How would a 19th century audience have looked at it? I mean, there's that little black girl minding the baby, and if this is Dixieland, the kid's a slave, presumably, and yet I mean, she'd have to be. So if this is called Dixieland, then the child is a slave, and yet she's smiling? It's a stereotypical image. It certainly doesn't say, let's not have slaves, and it disturbs me. So is it supposed to be a positive image? You know, they are smiling. They're servants. They're not slaves in the 4th of July picnic. And maybe they can even feel free to laugh at the crotchety old white lady. But they still are servants. And of course, most black people were. I mean, there were some people who were black people who had their own businesses, you know, blacksmiths or whatever. But even though they were, you know, when they were free. But you know, here they are servants, and that would be what you probably would see. If the dates are correct, and we know it's correct for the 4th of July picnic, I have not seen this other painting, so I don't know whether the date is an assumption or if it's actually on the painting. But we're seeing, you know, before the war between the states and during the war between the states, and presumably these people are in two different places. You know, it's very troublesome for a modern audience. What was it supposed to be for the 19th century audience? So we might be able to discuss that. This is, once again, a very large painting. This is in the National Museum of American Art. And once again, it's quite ambitious because it does have some extra moral meaning beyond portraiture. It has two names to it. It's a portrait of Mrs. Fithian, and it's, I guess you would say its allegorical name, We Both Must Fade. So you have this beautiful woman it's her portrait, and yet there is the theme of the vanitas tradition. Now, once again, the one thing that strikes me about this picture in a negative fashion is the head's too big. And I think I said that if she had had her European training, I think the heads would have been smaller. And, you know, she's used to doing these very humorous things with the large head is kind of part of that caricature, perhaps. In this case, it's not a caricature, it's a portrait. And it's also possible that she was, you know, a short woman in her proportion, that she has accurately represented the proportions, that she's not trying to do an idealistic form. But for those of us who are, you know, used to the conventions, you know, I wonder about that. On the other hand, the painting is beautifully painted. And I do have some details to show you that. She really can paint beautifully. What for our modern taste is against her is her subject matter. The portrait has a moral. It comes from the Vanitas tradition of vanity, vanity, all is vanity. You're just going to die anyway. The idea of the brevity of human life. And so we have a number of things in the picture that reminds us. Now, we both must fade. That's referring to the beauty of the young woman who is portrayed here and the flower that she's holding. And as we know, the flower with the petals which are falling down onto the floor is a symbol that we saw back in the 17th century. The idea that flowers die, fade, their petals fall out, and this is a kind of metaphor for the brevity of human life as well as plant life. There are some lamps in the room, but they're turned out. Just like say the lamp goes out, the light goes out. And the idea is that beauty, whether it's the flower or whether it's the young woman, will fade and die. Now, I don't have any exterior evidence, but I'm quite certain that this was something that the sitter would have wanted in the picture, that this she wouldn't have just stuck this in, because you can see you could insult someone. So presumably the sitter herself is showing the moral aspect of this. She's getting a beautiful portrait, and she's also showing that she's a person who thinks beyond the superficial. These are some of the details, and as I said, they're just exquisite. The flower, the lace is gorgeous. The jewels, the lights is shining off in the polished woods. All of these wonderful still life and fabric elements. Blue satin, lace, jewels. The lace is, as I say, is just exquisite. And the fall of the lace. She's got a lace over skirt over the blue underskirt. So they're probably extremely expensive too. Now, as I said, the sad thing about Lilly Martin Spencer, and we have here a photograph of her at old age. Her work was widely reproduced. It was very, very popular. It was calendar art, and yet in old age she was impoverished. I think by this time her husband has died, and she's reduced to trading her paintings for food. It's said that she literally died at her easel, or she was painting, painting, painting. But also, as you can see, I think she's true to the vision of being an American artist.